how you, Claudio, took the leap and you started your own business.
I wanted to learn something that I could use to help my parents and help people like my parents.
Were there any fears going into it?
I think one of the biggest fears I had was like being able to charge what I wanted to charge, what I felt I was worth.
So one of my biggest fears in starting any project is burnout.
It's kind of romanticized. People are like, oh yeah, like I'm an entrepreneur, I'm gonna have to work hard. But I don't think they know just how hard it's gonna be until you actually go through it.
What are some actionable tips to protecting the marriage while you are growing a business?
If you yourself are not feeling well, if your cup is not full, it's gonna be very difficult to fill your partner's cup.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny and I'm with my husband Claudio, and welcome to our couples podcast. This is our third episode. I am so excited to have this project and to learn and grow with it and share it with you guys. I wanted to remind you that this podcast is so special to us because we are just trying to make it as a first generation in living in America, and we are hoping that through our story, through our experiences, we can redefine what it means to thrive and to break from generational norms. And we hope that this could inspire our audience as well. That being said, welcome, Claudio.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
So how are you feeling in the third episode?
Third episode, I'm feeling pretty good. I feel like I'm not as nervous, and so I'm hoping this will be like a more, free-flowing podcast episode, which would be great. But ultimately, I'm excited. I'm really excited to jump into today's topic. And I'm excited to be back in the studio on a new set too.
Yes, we definitely want to hear from the audience what they prefer. I really like the coziness of this, and I feel like we can play around like in different, I feel like it can be cozy. Maybe some nights we can have themed nights and we can have like popcorn like we're watching a movie or something.
Yeah, we should have been wearing a Christmas hat or something.
I know, I was thinking about that. I'm like dressed cozy and because I thought about like, oh, it's the holidays, and I did it in the last podcast as well. But I definitely feel like we can get even crazier with the costumes. But I also really like the first set we use. So definitely like let us know which one you guys prefer. All right, so for this third episode, I feel like I said in the beginning of the process, like, oh, we need to start with like hard-hitting topics, get out of the way, which was talking about generational trauma, how it affects our views on finances. But as I drafted up our third episode, I realized every episode we're going to do from here on out is going to be quote unquote like hard, because it does require it requires you to dig deep and to be vulnerable. And I don't think I'll ever truly get used to that on camera. So without further ado, shall I introduce the topic?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right. Sounds great. Okay. So for this episode, this week's topic, we are going to talk about how you, Claudio, took the leap and you started your own business. And we're going to talk about that journey, and we're going to talk about how we found a way to thrive and how we're still figuring out a way to we're figuring out what it means to thrive, right? No one ever, I don't think it's an overnight success story. Our story is still continuing, but we're learning about how do you manage to grow a business and how we're managing to still nourish our relationship. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think it's important to talk about that. It's funny you use the word like thrive, because I don't think I ever wake up and I'm like, oh, today I'm thriving. You know what I mean? But it is something that you kind of, as you go through your journey, you start to realize, okay, this is working and I'm making it work. And, let's try to reap some of the fruits of the hard work that we're putting in. So yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I hope when someone listens to a podcast, they understand, like, we want to be candid as much as possible. And again, we're hoping that it provides some insight to the audience.
Yeah, I'm an open book, maybe to a fault, so.
All right, so I want you to go ahead and just share basically your origin story. Tell the audience on why you decided to start your own business. And please tell me about just, I guess, the anxieties you had going into it, but ultimately, why'd you choose to go through with such an enormous, milestone in your life? I mean, tell us how old you were, just origin story.
Definitely heavily influenced by my parents. I call them serial entrepreneurs because they had a bunch of small businesses kind of growing up, and they started and stopped them, right? It's very tough. So we kind of went through it with every different venture that they went into, and it was a very enlightening experience because it definitely required a lot of hard work. I mean, it was something that after school, we would get picked up, go straight to either the office or, my dad had 2 restaurants at one point, or help out in the family business. And then on the weekends, same thing, get up early, you don't get to sleep in, you have to go work, and you have to be generally available. And this is while we were juggling, school full-time as well. Full-time meaning, we were in high school or middle school, something like that. And then growing up, when I got a chance to study at Cal State Fullerton, I realized that I wanted to help people like my parents. I didn't want to be, doing the day-to-day work and especially a lot of the heavy lifting on hard labor, but I wanted to learn something that I could use to help my parents and help people like my parents. So I studied accounting, I got my CPA license, and I knew that growing up in an entrepreneurial environment that I wanted to be out on my own as soon as possible. So I started my practice back in 2022. It was November, it was the end of the year. There wasn't a lot of people looking for tax services, or at least in my network, there wasn't that big of a big boom for new business or anything like that. But, I started networking. I got lucky. I think business has a lot to do with some luck as well as just being finding the opportunities and being prepared. And so I got a little bit of luck. I started networking and putting in the work, and I was working full time while I was building up my practice. So it took me about 2 years to really become self-sufficient. Yeah, I mean, that was my origin story kind of in a nutshell was, okay, I know what I want to do. I know who I want to help. How do I do this? I just start putting myself out there, just start networking and asking for business. And with a little bit of luck, you can do a lot of stuff. So,
were there any fears going into it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the biggest fears I had was being able to charge what I wanted to charge, what I felt I was worth. There was a fear, insecurity in my self-worth. And being a new CPA, also, being a new business owner, it was holy cow, I don't have much clients right now. So can I really charge this guy what I should be charging them? And the answer is always yes, you definitely should. But there was a fear associated with that. There was always a fear going to the first networking event or the first meeting. It's you don't know anyone. You just heard about them online. Nobody invited you in. And so there's also a fear too of being kind of the new kid on the block and just showing up and seeing what happens. And all those fears, you just got to push them aside and you got to do it. There's even fear, I was working for other firms for about 4 years at that point. And there was even a fear that I didn't even know how to do the work that I was doing. But I was doing the exact same thing I was doing at my employer, but now it's just for my own clients. And so of course I knew how to do what I was doing, but there was a fear associated with that too. And I mean, a lot of people these days, we call it imposter syndrome, and it definitely exists for sure. And you just push past it.
So one of my biggest fears in starting any project is burnout.
Yep.
Was that something that came across your head, or is that something until you were in the thick of it?
That's a great question. So it's if I was planning to experience burnout at some point, getting into it, I wouldn't say anyone, at least not from what I know, that people plan to
That's true.
feel burnout,
Yeah.
right? They know it takes a lot of work, and in entrepreneurship, they kind of romanticize it, right? It's the grind, it's startup mode, it's, you got to go out there and you got to hustle, and it's going to be hard. And they talk about, 12, 14, 16-hour work days. I hear that all the time in the entrepreneurship world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of romanticized. People are like, oh yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to have to work hard. But I don't think they know just how hard it's going to be until you actually go through it. And that's something that nothing can prepare you for. You can tell yourself that it's going to be difficult, that it's going to require 16-hour days, 4 hours of sleep, 2 hours of sleep, sometimes staying up all night. I've definitely had that experience. And it's always going to be harder than what you think it is, no matter what. So yeah, there's definitely that component of it. And in terms of the burnout, that was definitely, it's kind of like a recurring pattern. People talk about, and you hear a lot about work-life balance. You'll also hear a lot of very successful entrepreneurs, and I'm talking about Bill Gates level type of success, right? And a lot of times what they talk about is not a work-life balance, but certain phases or cycles that you go through in your work ethic where you're putting the pedal to the metal, redlining, you're going as hard as you can, and you're making results. You're being very productive. Then you burn out, or you have to take a rest period. Because if you don't take care of yourself after you've put everything that you've got towards your work, you will burn out, and you will find it very difficult to recover from that. And so I think most entrepreneurs, instead of trying to find a work-life balance or plan for a burnout, they'll actually, at least what works a little bit better for me, is to plan to go all out, to put all your effort in it, to push it to the limit, and then take a break and recover, and then do the same thing again. And hopefully you can continue to do more every single time. And your breaks, you recover faster, or at least it's more worth it. It's more productive.
You brought up a really good point I want to touch upon. You mentioned that entrepreneurship, startup mode, is highly romanticized. It affects one's mental health, which I agree. It affects, your energy levels. I agree, to lead to burnout. I also want to talk about how, because of the essence of the podcast, how it could affect relationships. And moving on to the next segment, I want to talk about how this entrepreneurship brings about unique challenges not only that you have with yourself, but challenges you have when relationships are in the mix. We romanticize grinding it out, the 9 to 5. We almost romanticize it as it's very individualist. It's very individualist, like the overnight success story, and your face is on the Forbes under 30. And a lot of people don't mention the village that it takes. People assume, oh, that's just the staff in the business. But also it's these really important intimate relationships that are also in the mix. And I feel that we overlook it. I feel that we overlook how much not only oneself is affected, but also others around you. And that's a unique challenge we have. When you started your business, how old were you?
I was 2022, so I must have been 23. 23
years old. And you had, life looked different. And you were in a relationship that went from boyfriend, girlfriend to fiancés, and now we're married.
I was going to say, you make it sound like it's someone else.
Yeah. But throughout that period of time, a lot of people with a business, I would say that I need people to understand, it kind of felt like having the closest thing that we know now from our life experiences of raising a child.
Oh, yeah.
And raising a child, and our dynamic looked so different. And the way I see it romanticized as entrepreneurship is that it can get quite lonely almost. A lot of people, from what I've seen and consumed from media, a lot of relationships don't make it with entrepreneurship. So we went from recent grads of university and you starting a business, which is such, pun intended, a taxing.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
so taxing on the body. Somehow we made it to married life. And by no way, shape, or form can I say that was a true breeze. I think everyone's life circumstances are different. And I think what we went through was really unique, and it's immense. When you said it takes in luck, I think we had immense privilege, and we were really lucky. We had a roof over our head, and being so young, and we don't have any dependents. It was such a unique circumstance where I definitely feel like we most likely had it easier than a lot other entrepreneurs. But there were still challenges along the way. It was because we are changing the dynamic that we're living in. And we went from a dynamic of you telling me your dream and me supporting your dream. And all of a sudden, our house feels dramatically different than being a couple talking about dreams to now being in the environment to do so. From now, okay, he hit the ground running, and I am watching you become your startup mode in your environment. How do I fit in it? How do we mesh in that? How do we make a environment where it still feels like we're nourishing our relationship? Do I always want to be the dream supporter? And that was one thing that went through my head so early in our relationship, is that what's my role in all this? We mentioned and we agreed that during this time, and I agreed to it, that I would do everything I can to support your dreams. And because I know that you would do the same for me, I think that leading with love is always the answer. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why our relationship keeps going strong, is because I feel like it's important to set boundaries and priorities. When one person in your relationship wants to start a business and the other person in that dynamic is the dream supporter, mm-hmm. right? And my boundary, my non-negotiable was that we have to lead with love. To not take things like, when you're in a business, I mean, the energy levels are so high. It's normal for one to feel agitated and stressed. Mm-hmm. But knowing that the bigger picture is, for me, and then I'll ask you, for me, the big picture is, this is how we build upon our generational wealth. One of the first key steps to doing something so different than generations before us and our ancestors, and doing something that when we grow old and wrinkly, we're going to be proud of, mm-hmm. that we chased after it. And hopefully, I mean, if we choose to have kids, our kids can look at this and be proud of that. Mm-hmm. It's something that I didn't experience as the child, and I hope that in my future child I've turned the narrative around and they see that, like mom and dad built something, and that hopefully inspires them. Or if this inspires even closer, I hope this inspires my cousins that are already with me and they're seeing this and they know to chase after what they want, mm-hmm. and put in the work. I also feel like I want to change the narrative of what it means to be, the supporting wife, the supporting partner, the dream supporter in the dynamic. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times in media, I'm glad that we live in a time where media is showing how women or men, anyone can feel like a little like their cup half empty. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I understand. I see it. I completely get it. And I hope that maybe for the person that is burnt out in the relationship, or the dream supporter feels a little bit, the running on an empty tank, mm-hmm. I hope they feel inspired to speak up and have this conversation.
Let me work on responding, my perspective on that, because playing the role of a dream supporter, you talked about a lot of different concepts that I just want to touch on something that stood out to me, was that concept of, setting the boundary, putting love first and everything like that. Definitely, putting love first, for sure. I think the really important thing to understand as someone either who's taking on that leap or taking that, making that choice, versus the other person who's decidedly, they want to support it, but they're not, I'm a tax professional, you're not an accountant, you're not a tax professional. You're not going to be in there with me every single day. There's other ways that you can and you have contributed, but it's not your dream. You don't want to be an accountant. You don't want to be a tax professional. You don't want to own a CPA practice. I think, like you mentioned the word, setting boundaries. And I want to challenge maybe the listeners and us to think about the different perspectives that we have, right? Because for you, with your role as the dream supporter, is kind of the word that you use. My role is the person building it and doing it. And instead of setting boundaries, which are important, definitely, we might take the perspective of not only setting boundaries, but setting expectations, right? In terms of when someone is working, or, when someone is on low energy, what that looks like. And it's such an important conversation to have, especially in a couple where they're just starting out. There's a ton of work ahead of them, right, for doing what they need to do. I speak with a group of CPAs and accounting professionals every Friday. We get together over Google Meet, and we talk about our journey, and we support each other, and we talk about our challenges for that week, our wins for that week. And something that my good friend Kristen, so shout out Kristen if you're watching this, but Kristen had brought up, the role of being not only business owner and someone who's building it, but then also being a partner, and balancing those two roles. Like I said, I don't know if I believe in such thing as work-life balance, but you have to prioritize what's important to you. Because if you don't do that, your partner will pick up on the fact that this person is not treating this relationship, let's say, as something important to them because they're not, either it's not time, attention, whatever it needs. There's different love languages, and that's a whole different episode to go into. But I think if you set the expectation properly, which can be difficult, that's something that I struggle with, is wanting to dedicate as much time as possible to our relationship and investing in it and building it up. And I do a bad job of setting that expectation, and I want to be better about that. And I think that happens, that's just a trait inherent in me, that not only am I maybe setting bad expectations in the relationship, or at least I would like to be better about setting that expectation, I want to do the same thing for my clients. I set bad expectations for my clients sometimes, and it can damage the perception of the quality of my work and the value. And that's what pays our bills. So it's super important not only to set expectations correctly, but then of course manage those boundaries and be present and make that time for what's important, because the truth of the matter is that the work will always be there. As soon as you're ready and you feel motivated, you can always go out and create work and do something, right? But we never know what could happen, at any time, really. And so I always want to make sure to take a step back and be grateful for the relationship that we have and the support that I'm receiving, because a lot of people could be doing it on their own. To me, that's just way more tough because there's so much more happening outside of the business. That's just life in general, whether it's, taking care of your space, your environment that you live in, or just dealing with family, friends, relationships, stuff that's happening to people on a daily basis that is difficult to manage. So I just wanted to mention that about setting expectations and setting boundaries. There are two different perspectives about the same concept.
Yes.
That depending on what role you are, and it's what role you are at that point in time, right? Because there will come a time eventually, and you've been building this up, where you will be involved in your projects, and it'll be my turn to be that support for you and make sure that you have everything that you need to be successful in what you do. So I'm looking forward to that too.
I love that the way you phrase everything that you have mentioned about the different perspective on boundaries versus expectations. I feel like I want to give you back the space to speak on this.
Sure.
So what are some actionable tips that you can think of for regarding a marriage to keep the marriage, protecting the marriage while you are growing a business, while you're simultaneously juggling business stress that comes with building something, and also the stress of building upon the marriage, the relationship? Do you have any actionable tips on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say a big part of it is honestly taking care of yourself. Because if you yourself are not feeling well, if your cup is not full, it's going to be very difficult to fill your partner's cup, right? And that's something that people have a hard time, I think, putting themselves first and prioritizing themselves when they need to. And it's great because people can be very selfless in that sense. But if your cup is not full, you're not going to be able to fill up anyone else's cup. It's going to be so difficult. And then at that point, you're both being hurt by that. Either you're both drained or whatever the case is. And so I think taking care of yourself is really important. This is something that I speak with a therapist, because the stress of running and growing the business is so freaking much that my therapist, I feel like, is a great outlet for me. And also, of course, validates the fact that I need to practice self-care all the time. Sleep is a really important one if you're not getting enough sleep. And it can be very hard to get enough sleep while you're running a business. People say on average, you need 8 hours of sleep. I think for everyone, it's different. I've found that, and I track my sleep. I'm an accountant. I look at data all the time, right? So my Apple Watch helps me track my sleep. I function best at actually around 9 hours of sleep per night. However, if I were to take that 9 hours every single night, it leaves less time for me to work. And that's something that I think about. And it actually kind of plays out into my day. But I find that I can function anywhere between 6 to 9 hours of sleep. If I start to get 5 or less, it usually results in me taking naps throughout the day, which is not bad because I need that rest, but it's also during the workday too. So I want to make sure I have that time available to do what I need to do during those hours. Sleep is important. Diet is really important. Making sure that you have access to healthy foods, limiting processed foods and stuff like that. And guys, I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not perfect at this. I'm not perfect at any of these, but I found that this is actually what's really, really great ways to support yourself, so that you can be available to take care of your partner or invest back into your relationship outside of work. Besides that, again, setting the expectation, being really clear about, when you're not working, what that time looks like for you. If you're drained, maybe you're only at 20% that day, then also clear communication, being clear with your partner and letting them know, hey, I had a rough day today. I'm like at 20% out of 100%. I don't know what I'm capable of right now besides just existing in this space, right? Or maybe you have a great day at work, you come back off of work, you're at 80, 90, 100%, and you share that with your partner, and they'll better understand, okay, great, my partner's off of work, and maybe we have the energy to go do something, or whatever spend some more time together, more quality time. And then just setting the expectation again, I'm going to come back to this all the time, but if you're done with work, if you tell your partner you're done working, you got to be done working. And you can't just, grab the laptop from your desk, bring it to the couch, and say that you're done working, but then still be not present. Like you said, it's setting those boundaries, and I think that's really important.
Because when creating a business and having like the first child, we have to talk about the sacrifices that go into it, whether it's your time, your emotional energy, and money. That all needs communication. I have no idea what's going on in your brain. I have no idea. I just feel like a shift in the energy in our place. But it's important because if you have sacrificed your time, your emotional energy, and your money, that's going to affect me. That is going to affect me. So I love that you said that we need to communicate and we need to look out for ourselves. And I think that's so important. And I think especially for men, oh my gosh, I think all men should be in therapy because my God, I cannot imagine going, building and building and building all on your own without having a support system. When it comes to creating something, when it comes to participating in entrepreneurship, you cannot expect, in my personal belief, you cannot expect your village to carry the emotional labor. You cannot expect them because it's a lot. It's a lot to see and to feel the stress that you are going through. And my actionable tip is to have check-ins in the sense of not only how are you, how was your day? Those are good reads for how you're doing. But I think for me and what I prioritize is trying to bring about humor.
Yeah, that always works for me.
Yeah, trying to bring about humor, trying to talk about anything. It could be about pop culture, and I talk about pop culture a lot. But just not talking your ear off, but I feel like an actual tip is finding something that I know, this is going to liven up the space. So it's not so stressful, the startup mode. Let me bring some light back into it.
Give me a meme or something.
Yeah, I want to have conversation with you. I firmly believe that it's not enough to just say how was your day? It gives you a lot of insight, but we need to have different types of conversations. Even if you are in this startup mode and you're starting your own business, that's a way to nourish our relationship. We're still having conversations. It could be about the absolute mundane, or it can be conversations about deep emotional conversations, just opening up. If I'm having a hard day, I feel a lot of times a burden if I open up to you because I know you're building something great, but it's something I have to keep practicing. It doesn't stop because you started a business. I'm still human. I'm still going to process my feelings. And the best way to go about it is to share to you that process as much as you're trying to practice sharing your process as well.
Yeah, I think what you said is so important too, because like you said, you're still human, and we're still partners, and we need to be there for each other. That's a part of being in love. I just want to be there for you. I want to be that person for you. And I can't be that person for you if I'm not taking care of myself to do that. But I think it's also important to recognize too that nobody forced me to go into business, right? To start a business. You didn't ask me to start a business. I'm privileged enough to have a professional license and my degree to be able to apply for work in an industry where they need more skilled accountants. And so I feel pretty confident about being able to, instead of having to work in a business, being able to, work somewhere else where there's not all that burden and responsibility of growing a business. But it is a choice that I'm making, and I need to recognize that, because if I'm making this choice, I also need to recognize that the world doesn't revolve around me, right? And just because I'm having a bad day doesn't mean that I can take it out or, rely on someone else to fix that for me. That's not the case. Life happens to each of us. We're all human beings. We all have our own feelings. And I want to be that support system for you as well. So I think it kind of just echoes what you were talking about. Like, your advice is just, your actionable tips is just really, really good. And it also, there's so much I could say about this, but also too, setting time aside. I mean, really making it a priority at least once a week to have those kinds of communications and that quality time that you were talking about. That just echoes, I think, what you were talking about. And I wanted to throw that in there as a great actionable tip. This is something that you and I have been prioritizing. And sometimes we can't. The day or the time comes around and we're not ready for that because there's just so much to take care of. But setting time aside and making it a priority for both people is a great way to make sure that you're still maintaining the relationship and nurturing the relationship on top of maintaining and nurturing your business or your project.
I love that you mentioned that last actionable tip, because I was actually going to lead into my next segment of when creating your CPA firm. Obviously, you have inevitable setbacks, right? With such setbacks, you have already given a valuable step of take that first step and plan at least once a week, some undivided attention. Is there anything else that you would say that helps separating the business stress, the business ecosystem to the marriage ecosystem, to the marriage environment, is with setbacks, with feeling the failures? How else do you feel like it helps to feel supported, to which makes you feel like you can, you have two separate entities, they're not mixing and they're not bleeding into each other?
That's a great question. And this one is especially tough for us, I would say, because I work from home.
Yeah.
and we live in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
So we're definitely, startup vibes as
1-bedroom apartment, 700 square feet, 2 cats.
Yeah. As much as I detest like the startup vibe, it's like,
yeah,
we're living it.
We are.
So this one can be really tough for people who are home-based. They can work from home, or they don't spend a lot of time at the office, or whatever the case might be, because there has been times where I feel like I'm being crushed by the level of work or whatever I'm going through. If a client leaves, I tend to take that very personal, but it is what it is, and it is just business. But I'm very heavily invested into what I'm doing, and so any stressors that come from my business, I do and can have a hard time separating that. I would say great advice for that, though, is to try to find a time and a place to be away from the work. Make sure your phone is set up. If you have a smartphone, make sure it's set up so that either it's do not disturb after certain hours, or that you're not responding to emails or texts related to your work. If you can get out of the house or away from your workstation.
Walks
are really good.
Even corporate walks.
Yeah, and we've done walks, definitely.
Gym time.
Yes, the gym is good too.
In your case, you've done soccer as a hobby.
Yeah, yep. And that kind of, for me, that falls more into the self-care.
Oh, that's
right?
true.
Because it's not like soccer is routine and scheduled. Oh. I can be having a good day and I'll go to soccer. I can be having a bad day and I'll go to soccer. And
a big one to us is dinner or lunch.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because I freaking love eating, and I love eating good food, and I love eating good food with you and sharing it, especially supporting local businesses and being in our community. And so you already know which restaurant I'm talking about in your head, probably.
I know.
But if you guys know of a restaurant called Buco in Glendale, that is the place to be. Their food is amazing, pricing is good, and honestly, being in that environment, sitting at that restaurant, having the opportunity to do that is a great way for me to unplug from work, even if I'm having a bad day. And sometimes you're going to have bad days. Just treat yourself. I think, there was one case where I had a really bad day with work, and I was like, all right, I'm going to the Habit, I'm getting bacon, avocado, or, all the fixings, whatever they were. And you just need to treat yourself like that sometimes too.
I love that you brought up your favorite restaurants, your favorite treat yourself moments. And I'm glad you mentioned that dinner and lunch, to me, it's non-negotiable. That's a non-negotiable for me. It's a huge pet peeve of mine to be together in what I feel like the setting means a time for you and me only. It feels like that. I feel like when you have food with someone, it's kind of like it requires you to be in the moment. That's what it asks from you.
That's not a pet peeve of yours, right?
A pet peeve of mine is when it's interrupted.
Okay.
A pet peeve of mine is when someone's checking the phone all the time. And I experienced that as a kid. I felt like I never had truly presence from my parents. It was always something coming up when I couldn't really see my parents frequently. And when I was able to see my parents, having nonstop interrupted time, it just went like, I just feel like it's now in my DNA. Like it gets my temperament so bad. It genuinely, it's a huge pet peeve of mine. And I wish I can always have uninterrupted time when we're together, but obviously that's not reality. But I do appreciate when it's time that we are eating, at the very least, when we are together and we are eating. And we have a little bit of time, kind of like a break room chat, like just like talking about, I guess, like, or watching like a TV show and talking about a TV show that we like any, like that is so appreciated. And that goes such a long way. And then having our dates together, still learning and still falling in love with each other. And it's so important through dates. Dates are so important. I hope that we never get into roommate territory or co-working space territory.
Startup vibes.
Yeah, like like I'm stressed, our cats are stressed, like, yeah, that's why I said, like, that's why we have to lead with love. And that's why I have to remind ourselves that we're doing this because it's our legacy. It's our choice. I didn't force you into it. This was your choice to start something. This was your choice. And this choice of yours is your legacy. And I think you'd also feel strongly that a healthy marriage is also something you want as your legacy. Yeah. And that takes work. That's the other child of ours. And it doesn't take work how like media says marriage is work, like in a derogatory way. Like, no, it's just that, my God, balancing so much on your plate is the work.
Yep.
The marriage itself doesn't feel like work because we're extremely compatible if we're married. Yeah, we're extremely compatible. We married out of love. This wasn't an arranged marriage. So the work is the balancing part. It's the balancing part between oneself and being able to fill the other cup, the nourishment. That's the work. And that's something that we're not experts at. We're sharing our journey and we have a lot to learn because we're 26 and a couple that's been together for over 30 years will still say you guys don't know shit.
Yeah.
We'll still say that. And that's okay. And that's true.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably true.
It's true. Yeah. We're learning as we go. We're evolving as a relationship. And this was, I feel like, one of the biggest first obstacles we have as a couple is you having your child first. And I know that we're gonna have this conversation all over again when we go into my aspirations and my careers. But I just want to say that I know we're at the closing. Can you believe it? We're already closing this episode.
Yeah.
But I want to say, so actionable tips. I want to say our actionable tips again. So our actionable tips for me, I'll go first, is leading with love. When you communicate, lead with love. It's not you versus me. It's always like us versus a situation. So leading with love, checking in on each other, and uninterrupted time when we are eating.
Yep.
Like, okay, what is your actionable tip for the recap?
Actionable tip, find a time every week, at least weekly, to nurture your relationship with your partner. That stuff is so, so important. And
non-negotiable.
It is a non-negotiable.
We're
for
learning.
Us, for sure. Yeah. I mean, yes, we do sometimes, we can't make it happen every single week on the same day, every single time. We'll always try to make up for it, which is really good. But the fact that we even have that goal and we're making that commitment to each other, have a date every week. You should still be dating even if you're married.
Yes.
I don't care how long you've been married or how old you are. Dates are important. And
Agreed.
it can be different every time, and sometimes you can do the same thing, for multiple weeks in a row, just depending on what the flow is.
And I believe the business thrives when our relationship is also thriving.
Yeah, the business is a reflection of the ownership and the people working in it. So if you're happy, your business will be happy, your clients will be happy.
Yeah.
If you're not, your business will be unhappy, and your wallet will be unhappy too.
Okay, and so thank you so much to all of our listeners. This has been amazing. This is great. I'm loving the journey. And I want to leave off with a nice little challenge. So first, leave in a comment section what you liked, what you agree with, what advice you can give us. My God, we're always open to, we're open to learning.
Lifelong learners.
Yep. And also, I want to challenge everyone that may be in a relationship and have that check-in where your glass is right now. And have the check-in, have an honest conversation of where you're feeling at in terms of your career, how is it stressing you, and what you feel like you may need in the relationship. And have an honest conversation with your partner. Is this something your partner can help with, or do you think that this is something that you would benefit immensely from having a therapist as your support system?
I think support system is such a key word, and it looks different for everyone. Therapist is a good source of support, of course. Partner can be a good source of support. Of course, you don't want to burn them out either. They're not your therapist.
Yep.
Even if they are a therapist.
Yeah.
I'm in my little CPA, accounting group. That's just 5 of us. We meet weekly. That's great. The Rotary Club that I'm a part of, they meet weekly. I'm starting to make friends there. A networking group. So there's a lot of ways to stay connected and find support. And each of them are going to be for different things, right? I'm not going to come to my networking group with concerns about, my weight or my health or something like that. But I will talk to my therapist, and I will talk to you maybe about that. And I'm not going to go to the accounting group and talk about, I don't know, something that's not related to whatever we talk about consistently. So.
And then also too, for all of my listeners that are in the dating scene, I also very much challenge you to bringing that up when it comes to dating about your career aspirations.
I think they have enough challenges.
And I mean, there's a lot of challenges that comes in the dating scene, but I feel that, especially for women, from a woman's standpoint, is that sometimes men could be intimidated. And vice versa. Sometimes women don't, as a woman, you could very much be not supportive of the person you're dating's dream. And you have to be honest with yourself. Is that something you really want in your life? As a woman, if you're an entrepreneur or if you have big aspirations for your career, be honest. Weed them out quickly, because that person could, you could say oh, I want to do X, Y, Z. And that person may be like, oh yeah, that's cool. But have a frank conversation of what it takes to achieve X, Y, and Z. Because then you're seeing that person can decide, is that something that they want to commit to in their life? And then the way that person reacts as well, is that someone that you want to date for the rest of your life? Right. So this is a huge uncomfortable conversation. We, again, grateful to live in a time where women can even have these conversations if women are the bread earners, for example. And I just really hope that all of my listeners are unafraid to have this, to open the dialogue of what it means to support one's dream, to open a business, whether it's one person or together as a partnership. That's a whole other, ordeal. So thank you so much. We're the first in our generation to be doing this. We're the first in our family to be doing this together in the environment that we have created, in the partnership that we have created. And I can't wait for our next topic.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
Thank you.